How's that?
Good morning. Welcome to Digital Hollywood, the second day. It's 9:15 here in Los Angeles, and with traffic being what it is, I appreciate all of you getting here early in the day. My name is David Leibowitz. I'm managing partner of a holding company called CH Potomac, where I have interest in a variety of digital media and other companies. Enough about me, though. The panel is titled The Internet, OTT Media, and the Hollywood Connection, which is a very broad and kind of vague title, and there was really no panel description. So, but especially appreciate you coming, just wondering, well, what the heck does all that mean? We have a very interesting panel that's going to discuss what it means, certainly in the context of a variety of areas, but really focused on technology, how that technology is what challenges currently exist for both viewers, creators, distributors, and how technology is improving that from a variety of perspectives, as well as two program services that are OTT and have origins, for example, in cable and elsewhere, that have been focused on targeted audiences and how they are doing, what they think about the evolving situation in the marketplace. And let me talk more about what's been evolving over the years. But before I do that, just a quick question. How many of you are cord cutters so that you no longer have cable or what have you? So we have two in the audience for that. How many are cord nevers? Any of those? No, the cord nevers are still sleeping, I guess. And how many of you, while you still may have cable or DirecTV or Dish or what have you, also have subscriptions to a number, or at least one OTT service, and you get a large number of hands there. Now, of those that just answered that one, how many of you have an OTT service that is not Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, or HBO now? Okay, well, we still have three there, and so that's part of the challenges that's facing there. There is a wide array of areas of which people can now access and enjoy content. I won't go through the history of, from the beginning of the television, but things have really transformed very radically in a very disruptive way, especially over the last 10 years. And mobile and internet streaming has played a very large part of that. As you know and as you read, there are billions upon billions of dollars now being invested in the creation of new content. There's also a lot of other high-quality content that doesn't quite cost as much, and then there's other content that may not be high quality that is also available, and some of that may have cost some too, and just hasn't really quite succeeded there. And while it's theoretically great for viewers to be able to have a whole wide array of services and offerings, it also presents challenges for them in trying to discover or determine what to watch and what to do with your valuable time, because there's so much going on that it's hard to really be able to deal with that. And that also, because of the wide array of services, presents challenges, at least potential challenges for services like Reverie and Mixed TV, where we have some of their executives on the panel here today, and we'll talk more about what they are. But one thing we do know is it's a major piece of the equation now. And, for example, according to Conviva, in the last year, internet over-the-top streaming has had globally 14 million streaming hours. And that was up more than 114% from the previous 12 months, with viewing on more than 2.4 billion devices. Now, again, that's worldwide. If you look at it in the U.S., though, North American streaming has increased in terms of viewing hours by 174% over the past year, and accounts for, in the U.S., 58% of all of the OTT viewing. Europe is at 21%, Asia is with 19%, and I know that we're going to talk a little bit about Asia and China with Reza, can discuss some of that, with the rest of the world lagging behind at 2%. And it's not just mobile. It is increasingly people are now watching it on their TV sets, whether it's through Apple TV, Roku, Chromecast, or the smart TVs, which really have been taking much greater hold over the last 2 years and continues to grow significantly. So we have added to the types of programming over-the-top services. There's been a new phenomenon over the last year and a half, 2 years, of what's called virtual MVPDs, which are essentially your same type of cable systems you've had in the past, but now being delivered to you through internet streaming technology. So while YouTube started out as just an internet streaming on-demand site, you now have YouTube TV, Hulu was an on-demand program, and they now have Hulu Live. DirecTV has DirecTV Now. Plus, they recently announced that they're going to have an internet-streamed version of their regular DirecTV channel lineup coming up. That may reduce some of the costs associated with satellite distribution. Maybe not, but I think they believe they're going to get a greater viewership there. And Sling TV is another, and then smaller ones, and I'm not saying it in a denigrating way, but just in terms of the numbers, companies like Pluto, which is out there with their own sort of multi-channel offerings. And these do provide a greater opportunity for visibility for services, especially if you could get on those lineups, because the lineups may still have a large number of channels, but it's certainly smaller than what you would do looking on Roku and trying to select what channels and services you want to watch. So there may be opportunities there. They, excuse me 1 second. There are also questions about viewer adoption of these programs. So we have a terrific panel to discuss all this from a variety of perspectives. I also want to welcome viewers, as my friend Wolf Blitzer would say, here and around the world, that's watching us on a webcast today, and also will be available on delayed viewing later on. So welcome to everybody who might still be in traffic, and perhaps you're somehow accessing this on your way in. On my immediate left, your right, is Riza Rasul, who is CTO of Real Networks. And Real, for those who don't know, was really a pioneer in the internet streaming space dating back to the mid-90s, and was one of the original inventors in that area, and really helped get to, not that they're not doing stuff today, but they really helped get us to where we are by having others build upon what they were able to develop. So it's really great to have Reza here. Next to Reza is Damien Pellicone, who is CEO of Reverie. And Reverie is an LGBTQ network focused on that community, but also expanding out as those that are interested in programming in that area beyond just the LGBTQ community. We'll be talking to Damien about how his service has been able to grow, what challenges they face. Next to Damien, we have Jonas Halprin, who's Director of Monetization at a company called Cinecore. Cinecore is headquartered in Buffalo, but Buffalo, New York, so it's great for their economy to have somebody, companies there, and they were, I think, founded there, but they do have offices globally, speaking about the around the world part that I referred to before. And they have been one of the primary companies, certainly on the cable TV side, in developing tools to improve the consumer and viewer experiences, and they've been moving and expanding into the internet streaming side. So we'll hear more about that from Jonas. Next to Jonas is Miguel Santos, who's General Manager of Mix TV. Mix TV is also a program service. They're the only multicultural Asian American entertainment network that's both available on cable, where they originated, and now digitally through internet streaming. And last but not least is Neil Ishibashi, who's Director of Development. Good morning, Neil. I didn't say you could speak yet, but you can.
Some liberty.
Who's Director of Design Development at Fandango, and many of you know of Fandango for their outstanding ticketing service for motion picture theaters. They have been expanding beyond that in a variety of areas, including delivery of content through internet streaming, through Fandango now, and as well as a few other tricks up their sleeve. And so we will be talking about that too. So hopefully I didn't steal too much of your introductions, but I would like you to tell a little bit more, starting with Reza, about what you're up to and what's exciting. And then we'll go from there.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Reza Rasool, CTO, Real Networks. Thanks very much. Real Networks, arguably the inventor of streaming media, is still innovating video and digital communications today. It's two broad product areas report to me. One is the Real Media product group, focusing mostly on the codec, and I'll tell you more about that and how it applies to OTT. And then computer vision is the other area that reports to me, and that's where we're doing something more than just encoding the video. We're actually analyzing the video to find out what's inside it, and how it applies to OTT in maybe enhancing the consumer experience or even improving the monetization of the video downstream. So I'd love to talk more about that going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Reza. Damien.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. My name is Damien Pelliccioni. I am the CEO and one of 4 fabulous co-founders of Revry, the world's first LGBTQ global streaming network. We're not just a direct-to-consumer app. We have live linear channels. Pluto TV was our first. We're in their top 10 most viewed channels right now, and we're about to launch 12 more linear channels, all on the new virtual MVPDs across North America, LATAM, and some in Europe. We have the largest all-VOD LGBTQ library in the world, with over 5,000 hours of feature films, TV shows, digital series, the largest queer indie music library in the world with music videos and music albums, and the largest queer podcast network in the world, 12 original and 3 licensed. We have partnerships with companies like Funny or Die. We're about to announce about 4 more next month during Pride Month. It's our big marketing month. And we also own something called Out Web Fest, which just happened this past weekend, sponsored by YouTube, powered by HBO and Live Nation. Wow. Our opening night was at YouTube Space. And we honored some big influencers like Miles McKenna, Miles J, Ingrid Nelson, Dan Reynolds, the lead singer of Imagine Dragons, and we screened Believer, the HBO doc that's coming out next month about Dan's LGBTQ organization, and then had an amazing conference all day Saturday and Sunday with pitch fests, panels, and parties at the London Hotel in West Hollywood. So excuse my tired eyes. I am barely awake, but I'm here and I'm very excited to meet all of you.
Well, you have been busy.
Yeah.
But busy in a positive and fun way. So
very positive and fun way. I absolutely love what I do. It's one of the most exciting jobs I've ever held. It's my first time being a CEO, and I've worked for multiple startups before. And this is something that both myself, my husband, and my 2 partners, Aaliyah J. Daniels and LaShawn McGee, my husband's Chris Rodriguez, all started out of passion for true identity and diversity within the queer media space. Before us, not to call out any names, it was really focused, queer media was focused on a cisgender, white, gay male perspective, and that's not the rainbow. Our focus and our mission with Revry is all gender identities, all sexual orientations, all walks of life, points of views on a global streaming platform. Our second biggest market right now is China. Our third is India, and in our top 10 is Brazil. And that just attests to the content that we source, create, and distribute, because they're starving for representation in these other parts of the world, and Revry is now finally the platform to provide it.
Wow. Jonas.
Wow, I don't know if I can follow it up very well.
Give it a shot.
So, Cinecore, we are a media and a software company. We have a media syndication network, and we build many online portal experiences for telcos and ISPs and a bunch of folks, which of course includes a lot of video, a lot of mobile video, and the technology behind that. In the OTT space, if anybody here watches Game of Thrones and you want to watch it on your phone and you want to switch devices, we're the ones who power that. And currently, I work closely with AT&T on their web experience.
That's so funny. We produced Game of Thrones, the Funny or Die spinoff.
Nice.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but
It's really
I'll have
good.
to look it up.
You just have to download the Reverie app and you can watch it.
Done.
And Damien,
Talking downloads, I love it.
you and Razor are going to have to get together on what you're doing in China strategy too.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we'll work on that. So, so let's see. Where are we going here? We are going to Miguel.
Hi, morning. So Mix TV, we are an Asian American cable entertainment network. We are also now available digitally. Our biggest markets really is the United States, but we also are, obviously it's a global community, so we can't just limit ourselves to being here in the U.S. So we also launched in the Middle East on OSN, and we have an app with our partnership with Tubi TV on Roku, Samsung Smart TVs, and others. I can't think, off the top of my head, I can't. It's really early. But we also produce original unscripted content. It's distributed worldwide. We partner up with big distribution companies like Banijay, Electus. One of our shows is a dating show called Mom vs. Matchmaker. It is exactly that, where we pit a mother and a matchmaker to find dates for the mother's child. And so that is actually our most successful show. It's distributed in 84 countries, not on our network, on other networks. So we're seeing that there really is a global community that appreciates content as long as it's universal, as long as it resonates well. And we kind of want to advocate more about diversity in media, especially in Hollywood. And I think with the digital space, it's amazing how it's letting more creators come in and join and create. So we want to continue to support these producers and talents.
That's great, Miguel. Hey, Neil. All right, now you
How's
can
it
talk.
going? I could speak now?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So as David mentioned, I work at Fandango, and we love movies. We actually love people that love movies more because they buy tickets. But does everybody has seen or used Fandango, I assume, in the audience? Did you know that we do have a video on demand service? And has anybody used it? I have a prize if you do. Yeah. All right. I'll give you a promo code after this. But yeah, so Fandango.
You could just say what the code is. Nobody else is listening. So.
That's not live streaming or anything. So we really at Fandango had a sort of a really a point of view that ticketing and the theatrical experience at some point gets very limiting. And we really want to cover the movie life cycle. And the movie life cycle starts the moment you find out about a movie. So, at Comic-Con, they're releasing all these trailers and teasers for big movies that are going to be coming out like a year and a half from now. So what do I do in a year and a half? I just kind of sit there and just get excited about Star Wars? No, we want to keep the conversation going. We want to make sure that you stay connected with the stuff that you're interested in. But then, of course, when the movie does come into theaters, we want to, you can buy tickets. But let's say you're someone like me who has 2 kids. I can't always go to the theater. I can't always spend $100 for a babysitter and then another $100 to go see a movie. So what do? I wait for it to come to home and home entertainment. And then that's part of the life cycle. We want to make sure we keep you not just engaged with our business, but engaged with the stuff that you love. So I think this panel is amazing for all the diversity and inclusion. We are actually trying to scale our business. So we would definitely want to. I'm curious to hear more about all the speakers on the panel today.
All right, thank you, Neil. I have a question for you first.
All
just
right.
sort of came up in my mind. As you moved into Fandango now, I mean, has that created any tension with respect to the theater owners and operators?
That's a really good question. There is a sensitivity to our audiences, and specifically if you think about who our users are, we have a user base that is about going to the movies, but we with my business, we consider the user also the exhibitors. The exhibitors, we consider the studios our users as well. So with the exhibitors, the sensitivity, of course, would be like, do we cannibalize the actual ticket sales that are happening when we provide a service like this? And the answer is no. We're growing. We're selling more tickets year over year. We're servicing the exhibitors at a higher rate every year, and that growth is a testament to that is not true. Since we've actually had Fandango now as a service, I think what we're doing is we're actually opening up the aperture for accessibility and getting to the content however you want it delivered. How many people actually, travel a lot for work? You guys, how many people use their phone to watch movies or some sort of content when they're on a plane, right? Like, that's the accessibility we're talking about. People take stuff on the go now, and like the way to deliver that is you have to have that sort of that app or that capability to deliver the content.
You know, I think the box office has grown a little bit this year compared to, I think last year was down quite a bit, and maybe you could take some credit for that with Fandango Now. So
Yeah, sure.
you helped get more people interested in going to the movies. So.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been a pretty good sort of lineup early on. You know, if you look at the Avengers, and we had Deadpool last week, and we're going to have Solo this weekend. All that is kind of pre-summer, which is amazing. So it's been a pretty awesome early season.
Can I ask a question? I'm just sort of
Sure.
how has MoviePass affected your business?
Oh my gosh, who's that? What is that?
All my employees use MoviePass, so I'm just curious. Like,
Well, I think that the way we look at what we do at Fandango, it's about innovation, and the innovation that we think about is something like Fandango Now, where we grow and we think about other opportunities to tap into different markets. I think that's whatever's happening now in the industry is great, and it'll be interesting to see the success or failures of those types of businesses. We continue to focus on what we're good at, and what we're good at is selling tickets and getting people to content. I think the one thing that I will mention is that we're testing on a plan around loyalty, and if you buy tickets, let's say I went to go see Avengers, buy 4 tickets. 4 tickets earns you $6, and now I want to get caught up on Black Panther because that's available at Fandango Now. You could use that to rent Fandango Now, video on demand, watch it before you go or watch it after you go, to really stay in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because that's where everybody wants to be.
So I'm going to have a question for all of you, but obviously you'll talk from your own sort of business experience and what your company's focus is. But what are the 3 areas that sort of keep you up at night related to your business growth and also potential threats?
Latency. Just getting people to be able to get to their video.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, everybody's got it. They're on the go. They're on their phone. That thing doesn't load. They're on to the next thing. And if they've paid for it, you're getting a customer service call.
By the way, I'll just take. I'll
That's what keeps me up at night.
I'll even ask you just one. Maybe you don't need 3 things to keep you up at night, but if nothing keeps you up at night, that's a good thing. But where do you see challenges coming forward in terms of your growth? And Reza, you want to start with that?
Let me. So even though I'm a technologist, I think the big question keeping me up at night is, if we build all of this technology, if we build the capability to stream movies fast, is there the monetization of the experience? Has the monetization caught up with a newer generation, a new audience? Are the tired old advertising models catching up fast enough? Evolving fast enough to be able to generate the revenues to support the infrastructure needed to serve movies across the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, just customer churn always,
Right.
and we primarily started as an SVOD product. And luckily, we've pivoted away from just SVOD. We are relaunching in a couple of weeks a brand new interface that is a hybrid AVOD, TVOD, SVOD model.
You're going through acronyms
Sorry,
very quickly.
I know.
I understand it,
Yes.
but if anybody doesn't understand what an SVOD, TVOD, or whatever, raise your hand, or any other acronyms that come up so that we could explain them.
I will. I'll explain it. Sorry, my husband always tells me he's like, you speak in too many acronyms, and no one understands what you're saying except for us. AVOD is ad video on demand. TVOD is transactional video on demand. So it'd be like your Amazon, your iTunes, your single purchase, and then subscription is SVOD, video on demand. We actually, and then streaming or OTT streaming, we call IPTV linear, internet provided television. We encompass our rights as all VOD, which is going to be a more gray area, legally speaking, because then afterwards, as the technology changes and things evolve, we'll still be able to control those rights for content that we either license or we acquire or we're creating. But for us, it's customer churn. With the subscription side of the service, churn is very high, hence why CISO went out of business and why full screens SVOD went out of business. But there was problematic issues with services that are targeting millennial and Gen Z audiences from the beginning. They don't want to pay for things. And so you really have to go towards a more ad-supported model. This is what the data in the 2 years that we've collected on just Reverie alone. Let's face it, if you're not targeting millennials or Gen Z, your business is completely done. Millennials will make up over 50% of purchasing power globally in 2 years. Generation Z, which is 12 to 22, will make that combined with Generation Millennial will make up over 75% of purchasing power by 2030. And they're a completely on-demand, digital-only generation. So you have to evolve. If you don't evolve, you're completely tired and finished. And so the big thing with us was we focus more on the AVOD side now, and we have subscription, which is ad-free, or content which you receive early, and then transactional, which have different titles. And this hybrid model has been, it's opened the lift gate for us to now we have 70 million users in 100 countries, just by having this hybrid model. And the great part about this is the advertising side is actually more lucrative for us than a subscription side. We're seeing upwards of $35 to $50 CPMs with some of our advertisers, our biggest right now being Lexus, which we've had now for 2 years, almost 2 years. They just signed the second year right now. So, because we're hyper-targeting, so we can demand that higher CPM, and my belief is that hockey stick is about to happen in terms of the growth in that ad tech world and the CPMs that will match eventually and get to what we see as telco cable advertising prices today.
All right. Thank you, Damien. So we've already heard from you, Jonas, on this. Miguel, anything that is keeping you up at night? Likewise.
Not really keeping me up at night, but I agree with what Damien said. I mean, we do have the same challenges as well, but I think on a more, philosophical feel, it's really just all the mergers that are happening in Hollywood. It's like, is there space now for more players when there's bigger ones who are basically locking out the newer players and the ones that want to come in? And also the appetite of the studios and production and cable networks and cable companies for more diversity in their content. I think that's really something that we're hoping continues. The conversation continues, but with mergers and acquisitions, it's easier for them to block that out and still control the conversation. So basically, I'm saying is like, can the democratization of the digital space continue with all this happening?
So is there an organization, or do companies like yourself like to not? I'm from DC, so excuse me for a little Washington speak, but to go lobby or express your views on antitrust issues or what have you, whether it's associated with the Disney-Fox merger or Time Warner,
I think right now there's no. Well, at least from the Asian American perspective, there's no media lobbying group that handles that, but it's usually the networks or the companies themselves that would have to do it. So, but that is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. And I don't play law. I used to be a lawyer, but I'm not pitching you for any business. So I don't do that.
We do. In the LGBT community, we have something called GLAAD, and GLAAD advocates for LGBTQ representation in media. So we're lucky enough that's a 40-year-old organization that's been around for quite some time.
How about the Human Rights Campaign Fund? Do they get involved?
HRC does get involved. It's a little bit different, though. They're more on the political advocacy side, not so much in the media space. GLAAD specifically is for media.
Right. All right, thank you. So, Neil.
Yeah, well, not much keeps me up at night other than my kids, but that's a whole different story. On the business side, I think with the idea that we have all this choice today, there's like this choice fatigue, right? And everybody's trying to make things sort of personalized or custom or like really focused on the, what your tastes are. But I don't think anyone's really got it right yet. And as we look at our catalog and we get into Fandango now, we have this huge library of content, and it's way beyond what you would see on any given weekend for box office, right? That's pretty simple. Box office opening weekend, we know a lot of people are going to go to Solo. Personalization really isn't that important. We're going to just, the scale is at the big features. But when you get into a bigger library like Netflix and like Fandango now, where you have 50,000 titles that you have to kind of sift through, that's where it's kind of interesting to think about, like, okay, how do we take all this information that we have, and we have so many users, and we have access to all this data, and really do something meaningful with it. So that's what we're testing right now, is we're trying to figure out what are the right things to sort of put out there, what are the right sort of data points that are significant, and how to really kind of like make at the end of the day, it's a better experience. There's totally, when I go to Netflix or if I go to Fandango now, I open up our library catalog and it's just like, whoa, what I have no idea even where to start. You got these great lists that are associated to movies that you've seen, but I think there's a way to really tap into not just taste, but what time of day it is, what you're into in that moment, the mood, who's in the room with you. All those things could really kind of, we get into a more focused way of discovering content.
Are you guys? Sorry, I'm so geeked out by you. Are you guys into like AI and like? Are you guys studying this at all? Like where AI you can suggest titles based on like mood and. And all those data points that you're collecting on maybe the person opening the app at that moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question around. I think AI is something we are testing. It's early days, and a lot of what we're testing is it's really more around language and like what the capabilities are, and then that language, how do we kind of take that information? I mean, we're the go-to service on Alexa and Google Home. But AI opens up this whole sort of world of awesomeness, but also challenges, right? But yeah, we're playing around with it.
So I assume you knew what AI was, but Neil give it away. It's awesome intelligence. So that's how that goes. In terms of the predictive analytics and AI for being able to suggest, how people should watch something else. It's also been used. I mean, Netflix, from the days of House of Cards, which I think was one of the first phenomena where they, at least reportedly, used a lot of the user data on their different actors and storylines in order to develop that program. They have a production arm, or they've been funding programs to do that. Now, Fandango's still part of Comcast, NBC Universal,
yep,
right?
That's correct.
Do you keep your data on that siloed? Do you make that data available, whether it's within the larger universe of Comcast, NBC Universal, or available to other studios or what have you to help them develop programs?
I am probably not the right person to ask that question, but I will say this. The more systems that we can use within the sort of larger ecosystem of Comcast and NBC Universal is something that we definitely want to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. So, what's going on in China that you've been, because I know you've had tremendous growth over there and are a leader, but what specifically are you doing there? And if those are areas that we should be having in the U.S.,
yes.
How do we get them here?
Yes, indeed. So I was just on a panel in New York presenting on a case study on China OTT. I mean, the big takeaway is that China is big, and it's growing. But if we compare internet penetration in China compared to the US, and we look at comparable periods, let's say 2017 to 2016, we see 2007 to 2016, we see that in the US, internet penetration kind of plateaued at around about 75%. And we see in China it's still growing. Currently, the internet number of internet users in China is about 3 times that of the US, with still some headroom to grow another 50%. So it's a large market, and it's a growing market. Real Networks has been in China since about 2005. We opened up an office there, and it's quite interesting that if we'd been allowed to flourish in the West as we did in China, we would probably see a different position for Real Networks in the Western market. But just as a data point, in China, the Real Media Codec could arguably be called the de facto codec of China. It's 38% of content downloaded off the internet uses a Real Media Codec of one form or another. And so in that market, that's how we earn our living, make our revenue, by licensing codecs for devices like smartphones, set-top boxes, smart TVs, and other consumer devices. To date, about 1.8 billion devices have a Real Media Codec in it. So what is the implication for or the relevance for OTT? Well, it's a codec that outperforms HEVC by a good margin.
It's another acronym.
HEVC, the incumbent next generation codec, I guess. Well, H.264 is called AVC, the Advanced Video Codec. So most people that watch video through a browser will be watching H.264 video. It's a 10-year-old codec, and if you're not satisfied with the blocky video that you see, you can hope to use a more current codec. What are your choices? Well, it's typically the choice is determined by what hardware is on the device that you're consuming the video. And so for let's say for the China market, when one of our large customers probed their network, they found that there were 74 different devices on their network. And of those, only a third of them supported this latest generation codec in hardware. This is very different from the days of cable television and IPTV, when the service operator actually owned the set-top box. They owned the set-top box and rented that to the consumer or sold it to the consumer. But what they were comfortable in was knowing the specification of the device that they're serving content to. Now in the OTT world, a consumer goes and buys their own device, a Roku box or a Fire TV box or a smart TV. And the first time the service operator gets to discover the capabilities of that device is when the consumer connects it up to their network and says, I want to watch Netflix, or I want to watch Hulu, or in the China context, I want to watch iQIYI or CIBN or one of the OTT services. So this is a very different case when you get down to the nitty-gritty of codec choice. So how did Real Networks answer that? Well, we provided the market a codec that is in software. So it's a software codec that can outperform the latest generation of codecs. This is radical for the OTT market, because what it does is it puts the codec control back in their hands. The software codec is implemented as an SDK, software development kit, that can be integrated into the OTT app. And so now you have the benefit of a codec that can deliver you, I don't know, a 4K stream in under 5 megabits a second, or a 1080p stream in 1.5 megabits a second. That makes material difference to your business, because in most cases for an OTT, the number 2 cost is their CDN bill, Content Delivery Network, is their bill.
You're learning, good.
Yes, is their bill for transmitting the content, and they pick up that tab. So after content acquisitions, your transmission cost is the next highest cost. So any technology that can shave 40% or 60% off that bill is welcome. And so Real Networks brings to the OTT market a software codec that I'd like everyone to understand is available and talk to me about afterwards. Thank you.
CDN costs keep me up at night.
Yes. There we go.
Which, yeah, I understand it keeps you up at night, but it's also a good thing. Because it means that people, you have to have all that bandwidth to deliver to all of your viewers. So, but yeah, the idea of bringing those costs down, but also improving the quality of what's delivered, seems like a no-brainer on that end. One area that and hopefully it's going away some, that I know has been a problem has been when you talk about these various services that you're getting through Roku, Chromecast, Fire, smart TVs, the authentication process. And, will there ever be sort of a single authentication that you will be able to use, or one that is stored effectively that you don't have to keep putting in or adding to your different devices? And how is that being dealt with? I guess I'm looking at you first, Jonas.
I mean, we're working on it.
Okay, but that's been I've heard that answer for a decade or more.
Unfortunately, it's not 100% solvable because you have so much fragmentation in the media business. So unless there's one provider, Centacor, that's going to do all the authentication for all the media providers, which we'd be very happy to do, you're always going to have that. Now, the other piece is you also have the media owners who want you to continually re-log in to make sure you're the right person who's paying the subscription. You're on the right device. You're going to see more technology that's tied to the device versus the password, which is something we're working on, because not that anybody in this room or on the live stream would ever do this, share a Netflix password or something like that, or a Fandango password. So you can, not pay for media. So that's, some of the challenges. And, believe me, every time I have to re-log into the Cartoon Network app for my 4-year-old, yes, I curse the world because he doesn't understand that these are why we do these things. He just wants to get onto Teen Titans Go.
Is it also a problem that companies don't want to? I mean, one possible solution would be to have sort of a massive database, which would be industry-wide or a large number of companies involved with together, but they don't want to share, or they'd be concerned about how that might be used. And what I'm thinking about kind of came up last night. I went to the Dodgers game last night against the Rockies. They won. The Dodgers did. And but I'm from D.C. I have season tickets to the Nationals. Major League Baseball has an app called Ballpark. And so when I go to the games in Washington, on the Ballpark app, it'll have all my tickets in there. So I could just, show the phone and get in. And I went to the game yesterday in the Dodger Stadium. So I checked. When I opened up my Ballpark app, it automatically went to the Dodgers because that's sort of where I was. But it had my ticket and my parking for those games built into that. Now, granted, it's all MLB, and BAM, so they could handle that sort of stuff.
Sure, and you're on one device.
But, well, I guess they got it from my email. It was transferring that. But is there a way that you could do it, on an email basis that somehow would allow for collaboration but still preserve some data integrity within each of the silos? I
mean, with the use of blockchain and things like that, you're probably getting closer to being able to do things like that, to be able to authenticate. The hard part, of course, with building any database is people move, they change credit cards, they change devices. So
churn.
Exactly, churn. So it's I think an enormous data undertaking, but one that I think as we get to more better ways of authenticating users, it will get more streamlined.
I wonder if go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I could add to that, once we started implementing Facebook login, we went up 40%, 40% more users.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting because it's like we were on Stripe, we migrated to Braintree, and then we implemented Facebook first, and now we're doing the Twitter login as well, and it completely changed our business.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, social sign-on is an interesting one. I wonder if there's any cues you could take from sort of the banking industry with like Mint and how their authentication works with, I mean, security for all the accounts that I have going on at Mint is way higher than the content security we need, right? Or at least it seems like it should be.
But you know, even talking about churn, one thing that sort of came into my mind when you mentioned that was you look at ultraviolet. Does anybody, I hate to say remember ultraviolet, as opposed to use it. And so ultraviolet was a way that the studios were trying to enable not just the home video discs, Blu-ray or what have you, but also your ability to have downloads and to control them regardless of what stores you purchase the videos at, et cetera. And can there be a way to have a model where, and I forget the name of the company, but Jim, you probably remember, there's a company based in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, that sort of oversees the operation of that, where, so in a churn situation, they could go through that trusted party, check your database, seeing if that individual is still a subscriber, and then authorize that and still have a simple way to do this all behind the scenes. Just a thought. It's more of an observation than a question, unless you say, that's brilliant, let's patent that.
Well, I mean, I think you had it. It's blockchain. Blockchain technology is really just going to revolutionize the entire way that we deal with not just customer data, but subscriptions and payments, and that's not even just on the crypto side. That's just on the technology behind blockchain. But I think the interesting thing is, like, this is the new gold rush, right? The crypto gold rush, the blockchain gold rush. I don't know if any of you guys are doing like ICOs, but we just joined one. We joined the first LGBTQ ICO with 4 of the largest queer social apps in the world, which is launched already overseas, called the LGBTQ token, and now we're launching here in the United States once we pass regulation in about 4 or 5 months. 6 most likely. But the democratization, the transparency now of these types of cryptos and the blockchain technology is going to allow, we believe, for greater adoption, not just mainly overseas for us, but once in our case, once the LGBTQ token takes off here in the United States, the adoption will grow even faster.
Let me just talk a bit about blockchain and its application to streaming media. In fact, at this conference last year, there was a one startup called StreamSpace that was pitching an idea of blockchain meets peer-to-peer streaming. And it seems like it's an awkward combination, but when you delve into it further, you understand that you can use this ledger, the ledger of blockchain, to make sure that all the peers in a peer-to-peer streaming infrastructure get rewarded for participating in the network in an equitable way, and the ledger monitors how much they participated. So this is a great use of it, and they even proposed a currency for entertainment content. So your participation in this network through the CPU on your computer, through your internet connectivity, through your storage on your computer, earns you a currency that's perhaps redeemable for mainstream content on the system. Maybe it underwrites your Netflix subscription. And so there are a few startups in the space, and Real Networks is also dabbling in the space of looking at the application of blockchain to streaming media, not so much for the currency, but for mediating a more equitable and more fluid alternate to CDN delivery.
I think the one thing with the ISOs and how that works, just in my experience, I think it's going to work better on the niche communities than it would the mass community. One, there's too much competition in crypto right now. There's like over 20 or 30,000, and every day there's another 50 or 60 being built. So I think the interesting thing is, like, it would work for the two of us, right, on a niche specific targeted audience that wants to continue to grow within that community and democratize not just currency but peer-to-peer streaming. So it's going to be a really interesting evolution, I think, on how we get to kind of go back to answer your question, authentication.
Yeah, let's back up on one point, and I guess hopefully it's obvious to all of you. When we talk about blockchain, everybody immediately, goes towards cryptocurrencies and ICOs because of Bitcoin and everything else, as well as what you're doing, and what Ray's was talking about from the panel last year. Distributed ledger technology or blockchain has many important applications outside of having a token associated with them. And so there's a lot of work in those areas that's being done. And what Damien was just saying, there are so many out there as options. I mean, one of my former business partners, Seth Shapiro, was on a panel yesterday. He's Chief Strategy Officer of VideoCoin.io, which is one of those that is trying to be out there. But there is a number of others. I wish them all well. But let's not forget about the importance and value of the underlying technology, whether you're trying to, go sky high with an ICO on that front. And the company I was referring to or thinking about that was dealing with ultraviolet is a company called Newstar, which is based in Tysons, Virginia. We have, maybe around 8 to 10 minutes left. I'd like to see about questions from the audience, and please announce yourself. And the first person who had his hand up was a gentleman in the back. So who are you, sir?
Who am I? You talking to me?
I'm talking to you, Marty. No, I'm talking to you.
You just identified me.
Not your last name, though.
You said, my name is Marty Schindler, doing a future film panel at 2:30 today, but my question really relates to China. There's a theory here in North America that the OTT companies, Netflix, Hulu, etc., have contributed to the fact that last year movie-going in North America was the lowest in about 23 years. Numbers are up about 6% so far this year. Let's translate that to China, where last year the movie business was up just shy of 22%, and yet Tencent and Alibaba are streaming huge amounts of content, among others. Can both of those paths, both the Tencent and the Alibaba and then the movie-going numbers, both continue unabated for a while? What is your opinion?
I think the difference between the two markets is the American market's already saturated by the look of the numbers, and so yes, there is cannibalism of one channel compared to another. The indications are that the China market is not saturated. 53% internet penetration as opposed to 75% internet penetration in the US, which has plateaued between 2007 and 2016. So, and I can share those numbers with you. Send me an email. So I think there's still room for growth, and yes, both can grow in China. Theater going can grow as well as streaming.
I think, and let me just add, on the saturation front, it's not just on the internet side, but also on the theater side. There is tremendous growth in construction of new theaters in China. So that market is really a much earlier stage than our market is. You had a question, and you had a question, and then you had a question. I feel like Oprah saying, you got a car, but we're going to go first over here, and please identify yourself.
My name is Joey Hart, and my question is for everyone, but I'm going to direct it to Neil because you kind of touched on it. As a producer, I'm looking at marketing of the projects. And with streaming, it's different than the traditional way, where obviously your marketing is print and video trailers and all that stuff. Why doesn't streaming do the trailers before the movies? They don't have trailers on any platforms to sell those other films that are on your platform. You said 50,000, Rolodex, but it's hard to find those because you don't know them, and there's no trailers to entice us. Why don't they use that?
That's a really good question. I think the short answer would be that when you're streaming something, there's this immediacy that you're paying for. There's something that you're paying a premium for, and that premium shouldn't be sacrificed by advertising another film, right? I think that's where that is that sort of thinking. I do agree with you, though, that there are many ways to kind of innovate in the marketing space because of the way technology enables us to deliver content in many different areas where traditional marketing doesn't target. And that's something that we have to figure out to what the right user experience is in relationship to the messaging and in relationship to the sort of.
But when you go to the theater, you're going there for Deadpool 2.
Right.
You're not going there to see it, but you still get to see all the trailers that are up.
I think that's part of the legacy marketing of going to the theater. You know, that's something that's the traditional way that the sort of that ecosystem works. The expectation is there already. You know, the delivery in the digital space is, like I said, there's this immediacy. It's like, don't get in the way of my content. Anytime I see an advertisement on YouTube, it feels like you're blocking what I want to do. So I think that's part of the sort of the I guess the psychology around it.
Yeah, people don't. I'm sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
was like, you're right. People don't want to watch a 15-second spot to pay for the content they're going to watch.
But as a producer, that's the hard part for us to go, why put it online? Because there's no marketing from Netflix or Amazon for our movies. It's just a poster that gets lost in the Rolodex.
Yeah, I think that's, when it comes down to then more traditional, it kind of becomes the content creators. They're the ones, as you know, responsible for getting those people to eyeballs to go, hey, go watch this on Netflix.
There's also a different dynamic in terms of consumers and consumer behavior in the theater, the same as we had here about getting to a conference panel on time, having trailers in advance, gives you a few more minutes to get there. They're also selling popcorn, soda. They want you to consume and purchase more. Usually if you're watching at home or on your phone, you've got what you need. But it's still a very valid point on the benefits that would attribute back to producers to be able to do that. Gentleman over there.
Hi, Ira Liss, and I think I have an observation that I hope will round out to a question by the time I'm done, but I'm not sure what the question is yet.
Just you only have a few minutes, so.
Yeah, it's a quick observation.
Okay.
So blockchain is certainly evidence what I would call transactional speed with which we're changing the way that currency allows for us to have a siloed perspective of currency. So, because of transaction, it's enabling us to move faster along the lines of very specific markets. And of course, you have ICOs with brands attached to it. You have other versions of blockchain that make use of this opportunity. I guess you'd call it based more on transactional. In the entertainment space, there's also the evolution of the creative class that's happening. And I think a lot of this is being embraced, especially by millennials and Gen Z. And the expectation is that the content is going to be coming in the form of what most appeals to them. And so I'm just wondering whether or not the direction of content creation mirroring what's happening in blockchain, the siloed use of content to reach the consumers, whether or not the creative class emerging is actually going to drive us away from a larger top-down content delivery to the point where we get more artisanal about it, where we get very siloed about it, where the way that we are generating our content is specific to the audience, and as a result, this is the observation that I'd like someone to, probably you, Damien, I have to guess, because is whether or not there is a temptation to abandon the ad-supported model entirely and invest more in embedded, branded entertainment, despite the fact of the speed that it takes to get there. But isn't that really where we're going? If you look at Gen Z, if you look at the millennials, you're looking at how do we reach them, how do we advertise to them without slapping a banner on it?
Right. Also, Miguel, you could, anyone else can jump in too, but I don't want to leave Miguel out of this.
Yeah, I mean, here's what's interesting. In like the case of like Lexus, we do branded as well as the pre-roll, mid-roll. The pre-roll, mid-roll still is the most lucrative in terms of financial return for us and the quantity that we're selling to them in terms of our inventory. My belief, and it's really interesting because you're kind of like mixing what the YouTube influencer market does with blockchain, and then how those two worlds are going to collide and kind of create content that's very data driven. The content that we specifically develop is around diversity, but it's also data driven. We're seeing already trends and spikes and different kind of different trends kind of emerging. But what's interesting though, as blockchain technology comes in, as we start to move into like the LGBTQ token, we're going to be able to collect data a lot stronger in the international territories. That's where we're expecting the biggest adoption and use for something like that. And so we'll be able to localize different regions, let's say China or Brazil or even like Saudi Arabia, a lot quicker by targeting the content that we're seeing come through that chain, through those silos. But in terms of like genre, it's wild, wild west. In terms of length, we develop all lengths. Actually, we're seeing more adoption on short form than we do long form across all devices. Short form for us is under 20 minutes per episode on episodic work, or even short films. And the biggest adoption right now for us is music videos. Music videos and the collection of videos that we have has been a crazy spike both on linear and on our mobile.
Okay. Miguel, would you like to
Yeah,
add
I think it's really hard to to say and predict what the consumers are going to want. It depends on the content in the end. So I don't think the top-down approach is ever going to go away. Obviously, the major studios and major networks will always have that marketing muscle and that control in the media space. But I think having with the digital space, it's a lot easier now to have more opportunities for the millennials and Gen Zs to consume and create content that really, really resonates with them. But there's always going to be that. It's just how it works in the industry.
It's going to be Marvel,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's say you're a YouTuber, but you get cast in Captain Marvel. Right. You're going to take that. It's never going to go away. But I think it gives more opportunities for new talents to get into the space, and for studios and producers to discover them. So I think I think we don't know where everything's going to fall yet. It will, and it's probably never going to settle. It's just going to keep going and going and going, and we just have to continue to adjust.
Question back there. Can you speak louder, please?
My question is directed to Jill, but anyone else. Windows are a legacy of the analog film world in the major studios to extract as much money as they could. The new studios, so to speak, like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Apple, are all direct to consumer. Do you think that Hollywood studios will be able to resist that? Disney pulled their Netflix and now they're on their own streaming site. Is that Windows going to last?
Yeah, windows are changing for sure. I think that if we look at for our business, what we really want to look at is just kind of trying to project where the audience behavior is going to be in the future and where we are today. So if you look at that, I think you could tell by the way that we're putting ourselves in different areas, whether it's streaming, whether it's ticketing, that there is that anticipation that those windows are getting smaller and smaller. That's undeniable. So the shift is happening. Where they end up, who knows? What the studio's reaction is to it, I think that's up to the studios, and they're probably going to make the most sound decision for the business. The content creators, I think, probably just want people to watch their stuff. So that's. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting couple of years to see how that shifts.
Black Panther was still number 9 at the box office the week that it went VOD.
Yeah, that's.
How about the week after?
That's an anomaly.
Yeah, well, most people don't have a
100-foot. Was there another question? I'm trying to recall did you have a question too, or? No, I was looking at you turning, so I guess the answer is no. So we have run out of time unless there's another question that anyone would like to ask. I really want to thank you all for attending and participating, and please join me in thanking our panel, which I think did an outstanding job today. Enjoy the rest of your day, as well as tomorrow here at Digital Hollywood. Take care.
Jim, how you doing? Good to see you.